All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We got 3 people watching now, so that's good. I'll pause the music. We'll get over here and let's find out. Let's find a good picture to work on. So this is from my session with Haley and her boyfriend. Um, I'm actually, these were all the pictures that I had flagged. So when I actually import into Lightroom, for example, I have 130 pictures. If I go here to filters off, what I usually do is I'll go through here and select my favorites. And let's say that I wanted this one. I would hit the letter P and it would flag it as a pick. So if I don't want it, then I hit the letter U and that removes it from my choices. So we'll go through here and we took about 130 pictures and I ended up editing about 22 of those, which is, I usually do about 15 to 20 images per 1 hour session or so. And I think that's usually a pretty good ratio for me. Some people would like to do a lot. I have other things to do, so I like to not have that many. Let's see, somebody else. All right, so we're going to scroll through here. And we're up to 4 viewers now. Let me see if I can find a good one. I do mainly portraits, so let's look for a good portrait. She wanted a couple of shots here just by herself. So we have this one, and we have this one, and we have this one, this one, this one. And usually what I'll do is I'm looking for my best shots. And I think I like this one. It's either this one or this one. I think I like this one. So we'll start here. So you can see right here on the histogram. So since I shoot in RAW, whenever I actually import them into Lightroom, most of my shots end up being underexposed. So I will, if you can see, you can tell that it's definitely underexposed as opposed to this image that's already been edited. So we'll go to this one, and I come over here in Lightroom. Sorry, that was my daughter. So I'll usually go over here and hit auto just to see what Lightroom thinks it should do. And a lot of times it doesn't do a very good job, but on this one it does. It actually looks pretty good. You can see here, up here to the left, we shot this at 1/500 the second at f4, ISO 200, 168 millimeters. I was probably about 8 to 10 feet away from her, and then I have off-camera flash to the left, and I have that set to ETTL. When we zoom in, you can see there's a catch light right here. And this is my style, but I like to drop the highlights just a little bit, and I like the blacks to be a little bit blacker. And then I'll always add some clarity to it. And then I'll scroll on down. I usually don't even mess with any of this other stuff. And come down here to noise reduction. And I do it based on percentage of what my ISO is at. So if my ISO is 200, then I'll do 20. And that way it does just a little bit and not very much. So when I zoom in here, you can see that her eye is pretty sharp. Because she was turned a little bit and I was shooting at f4, her right eye is a little soft, but I think I'm okay with that. So now I've done all of that. Sometimes I usually adjust the crop. Most of the time I will adjust the crop. So this white spot up here is almost distracting. It looks good, but it's too distracting. So I will actually pull down here, and I like to keep my aspect ratio locked. I'll come down here and I'll squeeze it down a little bit. And I cut into people's heads a lot, just so you know. And I like to use the rule of thirds. And I do that. And we still have some nice bokeh over here. And you use this little preview screen up here to the top left to kind of see what your crop is going to look like. We can hit done. And that to me it's a little bit better of a frame. So I've done the crop. I've done my basic edits. I usually don't mess with any of the saturation, highlights, sharpening. I keep it simple most of the time. Every now and then I will click on enable profile corrections. And sometimes the 7200 usually doesn't have much, but you can tell when I click it on, it kind of widens her a little bit. So we don't like that for women. So I'll uncheck that, and you can see it kind of shrinks it back down. Now, hey Tommy. So we'll go over here. Let's see. Now that I'm back into it, I will right click on the thing and I'll go edit and edit in Adobe Photoshop. This brings up in Photoshop, and I believe there is an update today. I think I did it at my office. I didn't do it here, so I don't know what's different yet. All right, so whenever I'm working on an image in Photoshop, I like to do 3 things right away. I'll come up here to Window, Arrange, go all the way down here to New Window. Now you'll see that we have 2 windows of the same. Then I will go back up here to Window, Arrange, and go 2 up vertical. That allows me to have a normal view here on the left, and on the right hand side is the side that I'll actually edit. And I can zoom in on her face and stuff and still have an overall view of the image without having to zoom in and zoom out all the time. I've actually created shortcuts for when I do it. I have Command W, which creates a second window, then Command V, which creates the vertical view. And then I create a background copy, Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC. And then I will work first using my spot healing brush. I actually have a Wacom tablet that I use to edit with, and I'm using it now. And you can see, and for me, it probably took me a good 20 to 25 images before I felt comfortable using my Wacom. I liked the mouse a lot, and so it was really hard to switch. And so if you decide to get a tablet, just keep that in mind. It doesn't come naturally. And I'm a lefty, so that makes it even more challenging because I'm used to using the mouse in my right hand. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the spot healing brush to get rid of the hairs in here. And because my tablet is pressure sensitive, the harder I press, the more defined it is. So I'm actually using very light pressure to get rid of these. And then you can zoom in more using Command and the plus sign to get in there. And I try to keep my brush strokes short so it doesn't look so obvious. And then try to use just barely the tip of it. And so we're going through here, getting rid of all this stuff. Oh, we're back up to 4. So I'm going here, going through that. Go right there. And definitely don't like this hair in her eyes, so we'll come here. And we can zoom in more. Make our brush smaller. And kind of get there. Keep going. So this is like a lot of detail work. And what people also get concerned about is like you can see it up close, but there's no way that someone's going to be zoomed in 200% to see this and then critique it. I've gotten over that. The pixel peepers a lot, so I don't really care what they think. If I'm happy with it and my customer is happy with it or my client is happy with it, then that's all that matters to me. So coming in here, I'm trying to get rid of this, and it's not doing a very good job. So I'll stroke up here. And remember, in Photoshop, there's thousands of ways to do stuff, or at least hundreds of ways to do stuff. So you may be doing it differently than me. I'm trying to get rid of all this. And we're going here. And yeah, see, up close, it doesn't look very good. But we'll zoom back out here in a second. Well, you can look over here. You can't even tell on the left-hand side. And sometimes it doesn't work the way that I want it to. And this is where the Wacom comes in. I actually applied more pressure there to remove those hairs. So you can see we got rid of the hair. So if I zoom back out on this side, I'm going to leave this one at its regular screen, and then I can unclick this layer. You can see I removed those hairs on her forehead and across her eye. And I'm not I very rarely get rid of flyaways here in the hair or here. I think that looks natural, especially doing outdoor portraits. You won't, if you look at my work, it's always there. So, all right, so we've removed the hair, as you can see. I also, in this, sometimes I'll remove bags. I'll show you here. I'll create another layer. Go to our patch tool. And if she had some, which she really doesn't, you can actually scroll around the bag area. And right now I have patch tool set to normal, source, use pattern. I usually don't mess with those. And then I'll take this and I'll drag it down just a little bit. And you can see it makes it, kind of gets rid of that bag. Then I will hit Shift Command F, that brings up your fade. And I usually would go about 80%. Just to kind of keep it looking even more natural. And then you hit Command D to deselect it. And you can see that she had a little bit of a bag under her eye. And then doing the patch tool, I was actually able to remove it. I'm going to go ahead and keep it. You can see on her left eye, I'm not even going to worry about it. Now, one thing that I do differently from everybody else is I will flatten my image a lot. So once I'm happy with it, I'll go right over here, right click, and then flatten image. So I pretty much committed everything that I just did. Now, we are going to go to our, oh, I get some people commenting. Let's see. Oh, I just started. All right. Okay. So the next thing I like to do is actually work on the eyes a little bit. So I will create another layer. And I'll change the screen or the blending mode to screen, which basically brightens everything. If you hold down the Alt on your keyboard and then come down here to your layer masks. It will make the mask black. I grab my brush, and my brush usually stays at 25% opacity and 25% flow, and it's a very soft brush. It's hardness at 0, and then I'll change my size depending on what I need. So I come back into my image here, and then I will only paint in here, and I'll paint the whites, and I'll paint around on this side, and I'll paint the whites, and you can if you look, you can barely see that I'm doing anything. So if I want to, since my flow is at 25%, if I want to do more work on the eye, then I just lift up on my stylus and go over it again. I'll lift up on my stylus and go over it again. As I've repeated in some previous videos, people tend to overdo their eyes when they first get started. So what I will tell you is edit the eyes, then come over here to your opacity slider and drop it down 50%. That way you know that you didn't do too much. So we're going to stay at 100% so I can show you. Like you can unclick this and you can see it basically changes the color of her eyes. And we don't want to do that. We want to enhance the eyes, but we don't want to change the actual color of her eyes. So we got our layer turned on. I'm going to go back over here to my opacity and drop it down to 50% again. Or right in that area. 50. And there's some people that you may even have to drop it down even more. So we are here on her eyes again, and at 50%, all it did was lighten the bottom of her eye a little bit and increase the whites. One thing I don't do either is there are some people that like to remove all of the red in their eyes. I don't do that. People have redness in their eyes. If it's a big vein in their eye, I may do something with that, but most of the time I don't like to remove all of that. I try to keep my portraits looking as natural as possible. Okay, so you can see we lightened it just a little bit, and then after that I flatten my image again. Now we're going to work on the skin. Now she has beautiful skin, and her makeup that day was awesome. So we don't really have to do much, but I'm going to show you anyway. I'm going to create, this is called frequency separation. We're going to create 2 layers, or 3 layers total. You have your background, your middle layer, and then your top layer. After you've created those 3 layers, you turn off your top layer. You go to your second layer, and then we're going to go up here to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. And on most portraits, I start out with the radius at 5.0. It's just a little bit of blur. Then we're going to turn on this top copy. And you can see whenever I turn that copy on, it hides what I did underneath it. So we're in this top copy. And then I'll go to Image, Apply Image. The layer that we want to be on is this one here, our layer 1. We're right here, and then layer 1. And on our blending, instead of multiplying it, we want to subtract it. And this is what it should look like. On the scale, it is 2, and offset is 128. I actually got this from Flern.com, and he got it from someone else that had already picked out these numbers, 2 and 128. I don't understand what they are. I just know that's what people use. So I'm going to hit OK. Now it's gray. We will go over here to our blending mode for this top layer. Go all the way down to linear light. Now it looks like you didn't do anything. All we did was just turn it on. Basically what we did was we separated the textures from the color in this top layer. I'll select this middle layer now, It's when you select the middle layer, then I'll come up here to my lasso tool. And I like to select big parts of the skin. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this really well on YouTube because it's very subtle. But I'll select an area of the skin. And then I'll go back up here to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And this time, instead of 5, I'll go up to 9. And I basically do this for all of my portraits. And it did a little bit of skin smoothing. Basically, what it did was it just made sure that the color was a little bit more even. The spot on her head is a mole, and this is a mole. So be sure whenever you're doing your portrait work that those things are part of her, and try not to delete them or manipulate them because you don't think they belong in the picture. So we'll select another section, and I'll go around here. And then I'll go back up to my blur, then Gaussian blur, and it smoothed it out just a little bit. And then I'll continue to do this for the skin. And I've actually created a hotkey for me to get to Gaussian blur. So I hit my hotkey. In my case, it's Command G. You may have to remap yours to whatever you feel comfortable with. And then it brings up my Gaussian blur. I point to the screen like you guys can see it. I feel like an idiot. And then you can see it has my last setting there. And then hit OK. Oh, somebody might be messaging me on Facebook. All right. So I just did her nose. So now I'm going to select this area here. Go right there around her cheek. Okay. And then do my Gaussian blur, and you can see how it smoothed it out. I'm hit OK. Go over here to this section. Do the same thing. Command G. And I try to do the entire face, everything, every piece that's going to be seen, I will try to get all of it done. Now you saw me draw a big piece right here, but although it looks big on this side, it's actually a very small piece over here on the actual image. So whenever you're actually selecting your areas, you'll notice that sometimes it's not the exact size that you drew around. That's because there's not enough pixels there for it to select, and it's going to select the number of pixels that it can. So we're going to go here, around her lips, and here, Command G. All right, and then we'll come down here to our neckline and go through it. And to keep everything consistent, I do as much of the skin as I can. Here. And you may not even be able to see that much of a difference here on YouTube, but on your work, you will definitely be able to see a difference. One thing I forgot to tell you guys, I'm sorry, but over here, on my selection, I have it set to 40 pix. So what that means is that it's not a hard selection. It's actually got a soft feather on it. And that way it is not such a definite selection of what we're doing. There used to be a way for me to see this, but I don't remember what the command was. Go. All right. And for some reason it changed size on me. Okay. So we've done all of the skin. I guess you could do some of this hand over here. One thing that I didn't notice whenever I was shooting, she has some wrinkles right here, the way that she's holding her hand underneath her arm. You might want to keep an eye out for that next time when you're shooting. You know, it's just something else to add to your checklist. So Now I've deselected everything. We've worked on all the skin. The next thing we're going to do is work on the texture. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. And this is our layer 1 copy. We'll go to our clone stamp tool. And our mode is normal. Our opacity is 70%. Our flow is 77%. I select aligned. And I'm only sampling the current layer because we are only sampling the texture. We don't want to mess with the color. We only want to mess with the texture. So there's a couple of spots right here. So I will select an area over here, and then I'll just kind of brush it in and just kind of get those spots out of the way. Like I said, her makeup and skin are really good, so it's hard finding some things. If I don't like how this is, just kind of smooth this out. And it's just taking it away just a little bit because skin has texture, so we don't want to over smooth it. We wanted to make it look as natural as possible. I'm going to come down here and do this, that. And I'm just going through areas here. And you notice I'm hitting Alt, pressing down on my stylus on a location, releasing Alt, and then coming back over here and painting over those little textures that I don't think fit. And you can see right there. And we basically have smoothed out her skin. Go here. And here. Here. And if there's any other spots that we want to. And nope. Everything else looks good. So, if we were to group these layers, and go to group from layers, and then hit OK, you can see what it looks like before, and then after. No, not big changes. Like I said, I'm very subtle in my editing, and I like to make sure that that the portraits look as natural as possible. All right, so I like to go ahead and flatten again. And we're back to our main subject. Now, the last thing that I do, oops, I'm on the wrong side here. The last thing that I do is I'll actually do a dodge and burn. And there are many ways to do dodge and burn. This is one that I found that I tend to like. So I have my background, and then I go down here to my adjustment layers, and I'll select curves. The first one is we're going to go to the highlights, and I pull the curve up here, just like that. And there's no real science to it. It's what you feel like. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to invert this mask, and then I'm going to paint over the highlighted areas, and it's going to brighten it just a little bit. I usually don't do a lot because I don't want to make it seem unrealistic. So you can see here it's kind of a very subtle curve that I do. And then you can rename this Dodge. You can close this out. Then you come down here to it and grab another layer. This time we're going to select the shadows, which is right in this area, and we'll pull it down. You can see the getting darker. And the same thing, I'll hit Command I to invert it. And then I'll select, we can rename this Burn. So, select your dodge layer, your dodge mask, go to your brush, keep your opacity at 25% and your flow at 25%, and then a soft brush, hardness at 0, and then you're just going to paint over areas, over the highlight areas. So I'm going to paint here, bridge her nose, come down here in this area, and then I'll even go across the eyes a little bit, but you can't even see that much. Right here, top of her chin, and then I always get the lip right here just to give it a little bit more glisten. And we'll come up here, go around that, shine that up. I'm gonna go here, increase my brush size, paint along here. And you can see whenever we hit backslash, this shows us our mask. And you can see that there's very little that has been touched. So now we'll go to our burn. And I usually go with a big brush on this. And just like you would contouring, we're going to contour her cheeks a little bit. And come around here, this, there. And then I like to go over the eyebrows. Around the eyebrows. And then I'll even go across the top here, the eyeshadow. And then I'll decrease the size of my brush and go along the eyelashes to make them darker. And then along the bottoms too. Go back and increase, and I'll put just a little hint there. Back, paint cheeks back in, come up here again. Here. Now, one thing I've noticed is this hand is way bright. It's almost brighter than her face. So I'll go over this and try to decrease the exposure a little bit on it, because I don't want it to be brighter than her face. Here, and we're coloring. And you can see on our mask here that we're actually doing quite a bit. I may actually have to go in there and do it some more. Go back here. We're coloring just to give it some shape. And then you can go up here in the hair, darken some of it. Just to give it some depth. Go back to our dodge. Let's try to lighten this highlight here. Here. And I'm going over, just trying to bring out her hair a little bit more. Now it looks like it's like we're not doing anything whenever you're actually painting over it. But if you look right here in our mask, you can see that something's going on. Our opacity is so low that it's not really doing much until we look at the bigger picture here. We'll go back to our dodge here, and I want to kind of darken that. And some more to the cheeks. Oops. Just a little bit there. There we go. All right. And, oh yeah, and you can darken the top right here underneath her lips. All right. So if we were to take both of those layers and group them, hit OK. This is what it looked like before and then after. Before and then after. Remember, photography is subjective, so it's basically what you want to come up with. This is how I end up a lot of my images. So yours may turn out differently than mine. You may like to do a lot more dodging and burning than I. It really is your choice, so don't feel bad if yours does look like mine, or you feel like you had to do more than what I did. You know, like I said, it's totally what you guys want to do. So I am happy with it. We'll actually now go and flatten this image. What I'm not happy about is that her hand still looks brighter than her face. So there's two ways that we can fix this. I am actually going to try here in Lightroom. If we go to our thing and we go to our and create an exposure one and drop the exposure here down. Yeah, I don't like that. So you can right click on it and delete the layer. Yes. Come down here to our, you guys may know a better way to do this. I usually will find something else and do it a different way. Let's go here, brightness and contrast maybe. If we pull the brightness down on our hand, and then we hit Command I, and then we take our brush again, and then we paint over here to kind of darken it a little bit. Yeah, that's working better. Because all we wanted to do was just darken this hand up a little bit so it doesn't stand out so much. There we go. Yeah. And you can see that now her hand is not brighter than her face. Now, we'll go back. That's bright. There you go. I like that. And then we will come down here and flatten image. Now, I will close out of this image. You can see right there's the finished project from Photoshop. I will click on it. It'll ask me, do I want to save? Because I imported this from Lightroom, when I go back into Lightroom, it's already showing up in my, what is this? My film strip down here. So this was, well, actually, let me show you. This was actually this was the original image. That was the original image, and I felt that this was too bright and overbearing, so I cropped it down, and we also did all of our skin smoothing and stuff like that here. So while I'm in here, I always like to add a vignette, especially on portraits, because the focus is on the face. So I'll hit this vignette, and you can see that it darkened pretty much everything around. If we don't, or we can go to our layer, our vignette 1, which is less. If you wanted to increase the vignette, you can actually scroll down here to the effects, and then you have here our post-crop vignetting, and right now it's at 15. You can go to 30 and make it even darker, or you can go like that. And I'll tell you this, that doesn't look good. And I can also tell you this doesn't look good. This is old school stuff. I like to have, to me, a vignette should barely be noticeable and only basically by other photographers. So to me, that looks good. It darkened up. We still have the nice bokeh right here, and her face is the main part of the image. One thing that I like to do also, which is easier in Lightroom to me than Photoshop, is sometimes I'll even add a little bit more exposure on the face. So if you'll go up here to your radial adjust, what's it called? Radial something. Radial filters. and then go here to our exposure. And if we start that at 0.28, we'll come over here. I have my mask inverted and I have my feather at 50%. I can actually draw here. And you can see that we can add just even a little bit more pop to her face. And it might be a little too much, so you can drop it down just a hair. I think that looks good. And you can see this is how it looked when it came out of Photoshop, and this is how it is with the additional adjustments. I know you can probably do these all in Photoshop, but I actually started doing my portrait work in Lightroom, so I feel more comfortable doing big edits like that in Lightroom. Now, you can also do the soft proofing here, which will make this all white, and we can see what it would look against a white background. And to me, it looks really good. It doesn't look underexposed. We don't have any clipping. We have some highlight clipping here, but we're also shooting into the sun, and I don't think it looks that bad. So, I'll check the soft proofing. The last thing that I will do is I will export it from Lightroom. I'll right click here and then go to export. And then this screen pops up. This started happening ever since I went to, since I upgraded my OS X. I don't know why it's doing this. Anyways, I have several different exports over here. I'll do a standard export. I already have it set to where it'll put in a subfolder called Lightroom Edits. My extensions are in lowercase. My file setting is a JPEG. The quality is set to 80. If you go higher than 80, then your file size will be pretty large. So 80 is a pretty good balance. I know there's some photographers that even go down to 70, and you won't notice any digital or quality loss. Image sizing. This is where you can make a web version and a printable version. So if you go here 300 pixels per inch, then this image is printable and will look nice. If you change it down to 72, it looks good on the web, but it will not look good printed. For now, I'm not going to change my export. This is how I do for my customers. I'll change this to 300. And I'll sharpen it for glossy paper. And then the amount is high. I include all the metadata, so we have information on the file of where this came from. On this particular image, I'm going to go ahead and watermark it. Instead of the simple copyright watermark, I have created 8 different watermarks. I have a black, and then they're in different 4 quadrants, and then I have a white logo in 4 quadrants. And on this particular image, it would look good on the bottom right. So I'll hit white logo bottom right, and then I'll hit export. You can see it up here. It's exporting one file, and it's done. So if we go down here to our Finder, we'll start at the very beginning. So whenever you open Finder, you go to your pictures. This is how I have it set up. I have my 2015 photo shoots. I will go down, and I have each photo session in its own folder. Then I look for her folder, which is Haley. And then these are all the images that I took. And then they're in folders here, Lightroom Edits. And then the one that I just did, if I do date modified, this one today, 9/48. So I double click on that. And there you go. Well, that's it. I hope you find this maybe not entertaining, but I hope you find it educational. If you would, just most of you know me on Facebook, so if you just want to shoot me a message, and if you have any questions, I can definitely try to help you answer them as best as I can. Other than that, I need to get something to drink because my voice is starting to fade out. But thank you again for watching, and I'll let you know when I do my next one. Probably, I don't know actually when. I'll see what everyone thinks about this one, and we'll set up another one. But thank you again, and y'all have a good night. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, this will actually be, I'll save it as a actual video. Then you can come back to my YouTube page and watch it again if I went too fast or if you didn't understand how I did something. So just give me a few. Oh, Tommy Smith. I have a question about cropping. How do I crop to handle all the different aspect ratios when I go to print a photo? So the way that my website is set up, I approve all of my images before they get printed. And so that way I only work on 4x6 images. And if they want something else, then whenever they go to order, if the crop doesn't look good on their order, then I'll go back into Lightroom and crop it to a better aspect ratio to keep how I wanted it to be. That way I don't have to worry about having different sizes for every single time that people come in. It's just something that I do. There's probably a better way. I just don't know it. And this is how I've done it. And a lot of my customers, they'll go and look and say, all right, we want this one. I'll see how the crop looked, and then I'll go back and adjust it, and then replace that photo with a better photo for their order. Hope that answers your question. All right. So, like I said, I'll record this and I'll post it up on my YouTube page for you guys to check out. Other than that, y'all have a good night. And like I said, message me on Facebook if you have any questions. So, where's my, there it is.